Hi, I'm Stephen Button. Welcome. I know you missed them. As I say this, you know who I'm talking about. How does life go on after their passing, their transformation? That's the question. I find that a lot of people that I work with are mired in some sort of grief, and usually this is running underneath the surface. Now, we can clear this in all sorts of ways, somatically, verbally, visually, etc. And um, it can quickly get complex, but the point is that they want you to move on and be living fully and completely. They need that from you. Now, a lot of times we haunt the ghost, meaning to say, we think someone's haunting us, but really we're not holding on to them, or we're not letting go of them. Excuse me. I was working with a client once, and we were wondering, why is it so hard for you to let go of your mother? And she was like, I don't know, I've done everything. And then behind the couch there was like a 40-pound chest of silverware that was her mother's, and on the mantle there was a thing of ashes, etc. Now, it's okay to hold on to some things. However, you want to know where the anchors are so you can release those. Another client had lost his father, so what we did was we weaved back and looked for the metaphors. You want some sort of sweeping, staggering gesture that can help you release, ideally, and can create a milestone in your life that means, oh, okay, now they are gone, and now I can move on to the next chapter. What symbolizes that? In this case, they had been working on a surfboard that was unfinished. So, and he also had his father's ashes. So I encouraged him to finish that surfboard, play the music they would play, surf out in the ocean with those ashes, and release them. That was powerful. I honestly don't know if he did that, and there were many tears as we thought of it. Oftentimes when we're releasing someone, they show up, so he could feel the energy of his father there, and that's what's important. The ritual for release is important, and it's not as important as coming up with the thing, because then you're intending to release, and your whole physiology is aligning toward that. We also do ways of standing, being, speaking that help support with that. So I'm putting together a conscious, holistic grief manual. If you need that, you can comment, I miss them, and I will send that to you. That's just, after 10 years of working with clients, I've seen some patterns about releasing the grief and processing the emotions and the anger, and this goes beyond Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, though it does include that aspect. If you're grieving and you're locked in grief, it's really hard to be in the moment. It's really hard to even face this tree or this flower or this whatever with your full being, on account of the fact that half of you is still over there. And you deserve to move on, and they deserve to move on. I know you may not know how, and you may not have even committed yourself to the process. One client in a Philomela session, I pulled on her arm, and a gush of tears rolled forth, and we realized that her father had pulled her by the arm to cross the street, and her father had passed away when she was a teenager, and she'd never cried. She said, at the funeral I didn't cry, I never processed that. So her body had stored that at the level of the shoulder. She just remembered this gentle thing of come across the street when she was like a toddler or a young child. And isn't that interesting, the way her body backtracked and stored that at that moment in time? Because that was her somatic memory of connecting with her father. Come across the street, child. And that's a sad and beautiful story, and that shows the complexity of the ways we hold on to things. And there are pieces that are somatic, body-based, and there are pieces that can be accessed through awareness, and that's what the manual is about. Another client, she had relationship challenges because incomplete grieving, you're stuck in the anger or the denial or whatever phase, always arises as relationship challenges. The relationship challenges are the signpost that you need to grieve your thing. And as far as her not weeping at her father's funeral, that's commonplace in the sense that we need to move on with life. We don't have time to sit and weep as they did in the ancient Jewish cultures. They had a tent where the weeping happened. In most societies, there's 3 days of profound weeping, and then you move forward. So we don't really have that built into our society, so we need to create that for ourselves. Find the time to grieve and make that a sacred thing. And don't worry about the well being so deep that it never ends. Go into the well, knowing that if you carve out fully, most people are only going this deep, so it's endless. If you go this deep, you come back out, and you're like, oh, after the deep grief, there's a surge of joy. I often say the tears of grief become the tears of joy. This is a mystical alchemical process. It happens almost every time. It's just you need to guide yourself or be guided to the deepest grief. So, welcome to the new world. What would you do if you didn't have this loss, this grief to worry about? And there are things you couldn't do before this loss, because the consideration of the parent or the unprocessed whatever, or the shame around how one was treating the other. So now you are free to actually do things you couldn't do before. And as I started to tell the story, another client had relationship challenges. I knelt down to touch her feet, and they seemed bound up. So the left foot, we released that, and this sob, this throb of emotion, and this gush of tears. And we realized then that she lost her parent, her mother, when she was a child, and she never got to grieve that. And her relationship started to transform. A few weeks later, I did the same with her right foot, and she lost her father as a child just a few years later, so she was raised by a sibling. That was profound and challenging too. Part of this holistic grief manual is just reframing what we think grief is and where it carries. Would you think to work on grief you'd work on your feet? I mean, would you think that as a first? We know that intuitively. However, that's when I knelt down to touch her feet, she was very startled. Like, what are we doing? I thought we were working on my relationship. We are. I don't know how this connects yet. We will see. It's that certain amount of faith, like trusting in the body, intelligence. The body is not a machine that malfunctions. It's this instrument for the full life force flow, and there's this divine intelligence that guides every process, every storage of emotions. If the subconscious isn't ready for it, it will store in the body somewhere, I guarantee you. Between the ribs, in the neck, between the sternum and the first rib, in the psoas muscle, it can store in any kind of tissues. It just depends on the relevance, how you're holding the metaphors, etc. And we need to open this as a conceptual framework so that you can be freed from this. And this can also free you up to have relationships from an adult to an adult perspective. And the transactional analysis work of Byrne from the 60s, you're either behaving as a child to a parent with your partner or others, or as a parent to a child. And we need to get that to two adults interacting. And that's part of this work of rebalancing the head, the heart, and the gut, the three centers, is about that. Like, you deserve that. You are free to do that. And I don't know who you lost, however, the mechanisms are the same. Just the grief needs to complete so you can live more fully than you ever lived before. And that's the beautiful piece. If you comment, I missed them, I will send you information about this manual being completed shortly. If I get enough interest, I will rush that and send you a copy of that. There will also be an option for a paper copy. Again, I'm Stephen Budden. I'm an existential detective. I help people find themselves. I'm also a trauma release expert and a few other things. So I'm glad you're here. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you.